Okay, so we started today talking about speed dial in order to understand whether something is a function or not. So remember, if we have our speed dial, here's our phone. We can set up the numbers to call specific people, and it's okay to have two inputs that go to the same output. For instance, you could set mom to be speed dial 2, and you could set mom to be speed dial 7. So the first thing that we put in, that's our input or our X value. And what we put out is our Y value or our output, what the result is. So if we put in a 5, we're going to call grandpa. If we put in a 2, we're going to call mom. If we put in a 7, we're going to call mom. It's okay to have two inputs with one output. So for example, our input would be 2 or 7. 2 and 7 can both call mom. However, it's not okay on our speed dial to have number 3 calling the best friend and number 3 calling dad. Because if we push number 3 right here and it's set up for dad and our best friend, we don't know the phone doesn't know which one it wants us to call. If we push 3, the phone doesn't know if it should be calling dad or if it should be calling best friend. So it's not okay to have one input and two outputs. So for instance, we can't have one input, 3, call both dad and the best friend. Okay, so remember your input is your X value, your output is your Y value. I'll write that out to the side here. Input is your X value, output is your Y value. So there's a few different ways that we can test and see whether something is a function or not. If we look at page 7 and 8, it'll go through different problems on figuring out if something is a function. The first thing that we can do is the vertical line test if we have a graph. So remember our input, that's our X value. So for every X value, we can only have one Y value. Okay, so for example, for every X value, for the 1, it's a 3. For 2, it's a 5. At 0, it's 1. Okay, we can only have one Y value for every X value. So we do what's called the vertical line test. You make a vertical line with your pencil or your pen, and you go across the graph. If your pencil goes through 2 lines at any given point, it is not a function because that means at that X value, there are 2 outputs for the X value, which we determined was not okay. So on this one, if I do the vertical line test, anywhere that I stop my pen, there's only one place that it's crossing on the line. There's only one output. So that's okay. So this is a function. If I do the vertical line test on number 2, if I go across, it's crossing one dot right now, but then as I get a little further on the graph, oh, it's crossing 2 dots at the same time. Here's our vertical line, and it's crossing 2 dots at the same time. So this is not a function. That means that if -3 was our speed dial, it would be calling 2 different people, and we determined that that's not okay. So since it crosses 2 dots, when I do the vertical line test, it's not a function. Number 3, if I do the vertical line test, oops, I am okay all the way across. It only crosses 1 point at a time, so this is a function. We can also find out if something's a function from a table. So here's our input, our x value, and here's our output, our y value. Remember, it's not okay to have one input with two outputs. So we want to check our x value. We want to check our input. And if our input repeats, it's probably not a function. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. If there is no repeating, it's automatically a function. But on number 5, we have 2, 5, 2, 3. Oh, is it okay for 2 to go with both 12 and 8? No, that's not okay because that's one input. The 2 is our input, and it goes with different outputs. There's a 12 and an 8. So this is not a function. Okay, and then on number 6, we look at our x value, and there are no repeats, so it is a function. You may be tempted to look at the y value and say, oh, it repeats. There's a 9 and a 9. But we don't care about the y value because it's okay to have two inputs and one output. So it's okay that we set speed dial 7 to call 9, and that we set speed dial 23 to call our friend number 9 too. That's okay. So this is okay. You just want to look at the x value, not the y value, to find repeats. So if we move down to the ordered pairs, it's the same thing. Remember, in our ordered pairs, x always comes first. So xy, xy, xy. We just want to look at the x numbers to find repeats. So 12, 7, 2, and -2. No repeats, it's a function. On number 8, our x values are 5, 6, 5, and 18. So 5 is going with number 1, and 5 is going with 0. So that's not okay. This is not a function. However, I'm going to change the problem just a little bit. If this were a 1 instead of a 0, if it was 5, 1, 6, 13, 5, 1, 18, -10, this would be a function because 5 is going with 1 and 5 repeats, but it's still going with the same input. So, or with the same output. So that's just 5 and 1 and 5 and 1. If it's the same when it repeats, it's still a function. All right, turn over to page 8. This is a different way to write our x and our y values. The x values always come first, and the y values come second. This is a 2, and the line goes all the way across. So again, we just want to check our x values. And if there are two lines coming from an x value, that's not okay. Because it's not okay to have one input, or x, and two outputs, or y. So 2 goes with 10, that's just 1, so that's okay. 4 goes with 11, that's just 1, so it's okay. 6 goes with 18, and 8 goes with -4. They're all different. They all just have one output, so that's okay. This is a function. But on number 11, you see how we have 7 is our input, and 7 goes with both 9 and 12. So here's one input, two outputs. We know that that's not okay, so this is not a function. And then on number 12, 16 goes with 0, and -4 goes with 0. That's just one input and one output. Even though we have some repeats over here on the y side, that is okay because it's okay to have two inputs or two x values and one y value. That's like saying the number 16 and the number -4 are both going to call mom on the speed dial, and that's okay. So we just look for repeats on the x side. Since there's no repeats, it is a function, even though it looks like there's repeats on the y side here. There are two lines in